A lioness and a human baby form an unlikely bond. How it happened is incredible. The sun burned mercilessly over the arid expanse of the savannah, waves of heat rising off the cracked earth like shimmering ghosts. In the distance, acacia trees stood like silent sentinels, their twisted branches offering scant shade against the unrelenting blaze. A lone jeep rattled across the dirt road, a trail of dust swirling behind it as it disappeared into the horizon. Inside, Amelia Hayes gripped the wheel tightly, her knuckles pale against the dark leather. She had never felt more isolated. The research trip to study lion prides had gone terribly wrong when her guide fell ill, forcing her to navigate the unforgiving wilderness alone. Beside her, strapped securely in a car seat, her 1-year-old son Ben dozed fitfully, his tiny face glistening with sweat. Amelia glanced at the gas gauge, nearly empty. Panic clawed at her chest. The nearest village was hours away, and the radio had stopped working miles back. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. You can do this, she thought, but the gnawing fear in her stomach said otherwise. Suddenly, a loud pop shattered the uneasy quiet. The jeep lurched violently to the side, its front tire blown. Amelia fought to keep control as the vehicle skidded to a halt. She jumped out, the oppressive heat slamming into her like a physical force. Her heart sank as she inspected the shredded tire. In the distance, a low growl echoed, a sound that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. She turned slowly, scanning the horizon. Shadows moved among the tall grass. The lions were watching. The air was thick with tension as Amelia worked frantically to retrieve supplies from the jeep. She pulled Ben into her arms, his sleepy whimpers piercing the silence. The lions were getting closer now, their golden eyes glinting in the fading light. Just as Amelia secured Ben in a sling against her chest, a roar tore through the air, a sound so primal it froze her in place. A male lion, massive and scarred, emerged from the brush, its mane a wild halo around its head. Amelia's heart thundered in her chest as she backed away, clutching Ben tightly. The lion took a step forward, its gaze fixed on her with predatory intent. Her mind raced for solutions, but there was no escape. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Another lion appeared, this one smaller, sleeker, a lioness. She moved with purpose, placing herself between Amelia and the male. The lioness growled low, a warning, her ears flat against her head. The male hesitated, snarling, but the lioness didn't back down. After a tense standoff, the male turned and slinked back into the grass. Amelia stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat. The lioness turned to her, eyes soft but unreadable. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, two mothers in an unspoken understanding. Then, as if sensing her desperation, the lioness walked away, pausing to glance back, as though beckoning her to follow. Amelia hesitated only a moment before following the lioness, her instincts overriding her fear. The animal moved gracefully, weaving through the savannah with a familiarity born of years in the wild. Amelia stumbled after her, clutching Ben and whispering reassurances to herself. The lioness led them to a shaded hollow beneath a cluster of acacia trees. The spot was hidden, cool, and surprisingly peaceful. Amelia sank to the ground, exhaustion overtaking her. The lioness settled a few feet away, her amber eyes watchful but calm. As the hours passed, Amelia began to feel a strange sense of security in the lioness's presence. When Ben stirred and cried, the lioness would lift her head, her ears twitching as if listening. There was no aggression, only curiosity, and perhaps a hint of understanding. By nightfall, Amelia knew she couldn't survive without the lioness. She decided to trust the unlikely guardian, hoping the bond forming between them was real. Amelia and the lioness fell into a fragile rhythm as the night crept in. The lioness prowled around the hollow, her movements silent and purposeful. Every time a distant howl or rustle broke the silence, the lioness's ears would twitch, her body tensing. Amelia, though exhausted, kept Ben close, her heart torn between terror and awe. The first test of their bond came hours later. A pack of hyenas approached the hollow, their eerie laughter sending chills down Amelia's spine. The lioness stepped forward, her growl low and menacing. The hyenas hesitated, their yellow eyes gleaming in the darkness. One bold hyena lunged, snapping its jaws. But the lioness leapt with a ferocity that left Amelia breathless. The scuffle was brief, yet brutal, the lioness emerging victorious as the hyenas retreated into the night. She returned to the hollow, her flank scratched but her demeanor calm, as if she had simply fulfilled her duty. Amelia whispered a shaky, "Thank you," her voice barely audible. The lioness lay down nearby, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. As days passed, Amelia began to observe the lioness more closely. She noticed the faint scar on her muzzle, the way her tail flicked when she was annoyed, and the tenderness in her interactions with Ben. Ben, too, seemed fascinated. He would reach out his tiny hands toward the lioness, giggling softly when she sniffed at him. One morning, as Amelia fed Ben the last of their rations, the lioness brought a fresh kill, a small antelope. The gesture was both unsettling and deeply moving. Amelia hesitated but knew they had no choice. She used a sharp stone to carve a piece of the meat, cooking it over a small fire she managed to build. The lioness watched intently, her head resting on her paws. That night, as Amelia sat by the fire with Ben asleep in her arms, she spoke softly to the lioness. "You saved us," she said. "I don't know why, but I'll never forget it." The lioness blinked slowly, almost as if she understood. The real test of their bond came when Amelia spotted a rescue helicopter in the distance. She scrambled to find something reflective, waving it wildly to catch the pilot's attention. The lioness watched, her head tilted in curiosity. The helicopter circled lower, its blades kicking up a whirlwind of dust. Amelia's heart soared. She and Ben were finally saved. But as the rescue team approached, armed and wary, the lioness tensed. She growled, positioning herself protectively between Amelia and the strangers. "Wait!" Amelia shouted, her voice hoarse. "Don't hurt her!" The rescue team hesitated, their weapons trained on the lioness. Amelia stepped forward, her hands raised. "She saved us," she said, her voice trembling. "Please don't shoot." After a tense standoff, the lioness seemed to understand. She turned, her gaze lingering on Amelia and Ben one last time, before disappearing into the tall grass. As the helicopter lifted them to safety, Amelia looked down at the savannah, tears streaming down her face. She knew she owed her life, and Ben's, to the lioness. Weeks later, back in the safety of her home, Amelia couldn't stop thinking about the lioness. She shared her story with wildlife organizations, advocating for the protection of the savannah and its majestic inhabitants. Every time she looked at Ben, now healthy and happy, she felt a deep gratitude for the bond that had defied all logic. In interviews, when asked why she thought the lioness had helped them, Amelia would always respond the same way. "Sometimes, even in the wildest of places, there's kindness. You just have to trust it."